For most of 2025, an 11th grade student at Glendale Academy, Hyderabad, has been teaching herself economics through YouTube. She told the Ken that her teacher had barely explained anything. The students would actually be sitting through classes and copying points from the textbook. 4 years ago at Glendale, this kind of an experience would have been unthinkable. Under its founding leadership, the international school was regarded as one of the best in South India. But that reputation is now eroding. Things started going south after it was acquired by Singapore based non-profit Global Schools Foundation, or GSF, which is backed by global alternative investment manager Apollo Global Management. A former executive at the school told us how, ever since the acquisition, the school's teaching and support staff has been slashed by 20%. The school's annual budgets have been trimmed, and long held traditions like the Founders Memorial Football and Volleyball Tournament have been quietly dropped. Why? Well, it was all thanks to the scale up pressures that came from Apollo Global's proposed stake sale. And no thanks to this, the overall student strength has also dropped by 20% over the past 2 years. Other schools, like Hyderabad Santa Maria and Oak Ridge, have grappled with a similar churn post acquisition by international school operators. And of course, this isn't a coincidence. You see, private equity firms have been betting big on Indian education. And here's where things get interesting. Their playbook so far has mirrored a Western model. Things like optimizing for cost control, standardizing for scale up, and centralizing for effective management. But this doesn't quite work with India's education market, which is far more volatile and rapidly changing. Ever since the new education policy, or NEP, relaxed rules on foreign investment, including those on full ownership in universities, the influx of capital has been quick. GSF, for instance, has acquired over 5 school chains in India since 2021 and plans to deploy $550 million in the country by 2026. Another global company, the International Schools Partnership, or ISP, entered India in 2021 and now owns 4 school chains here. Now, ISP is backed by investment firm Partners Group that has $174 billion in assets under management. Over the past month, my colleague, the Ken reporter Vali Vikram, visited 2 schools and spoke with multiple founders, senior executives, teachers, and students across campuses. They all pointed to one dire trend in Indian schooling, and that is the rising tide of investor-backed global school chains acquiring schools in India and bringing about a slow erosion of what once made these schools exceptional. Welcome to Daybreak, a business podcast from the Ken. I'm your host, Rachel Verghese, and every day of the week, my co-hosts Snigdha Sharma and I will bring you one news story that is worth understanding and worth your time. A former executive at Glendale Academy said something that is at the core of the story. They said, you need to run a school with a heart, not a pocket. Since 2021, 2 international operators, GSF and ISP, have driven the bulk of India's international school acquisitions. While GSF runs 70 campuses across 12 countries, ISP operates a network of 100 schools in over 25 countries. And this focus of theirs on international schools is deliberate. Both CBSE and state board campuses face tighter fee caps and several state-level approvals. International boards like International Baccalaureate, or IB, and Cambridge have a wider fee latitude and can levy development charges, which creates room for upgrades and margins. Basically, this model manages to make money even within India's non-profit rulebook. What that means is that all private schools in India, whether domestic or foreign-backed, must be established as not-for-profit entities, such as trusts, societies, or Section 8 companies. The school usually sits in a Section 8 entity to satisfy kindergarten to grade 12 regulations, and a for-profit services arm, which typically charges 10 to 15% of school revenue through the likes of management fees, royalties, and infrastructure leases, operates on the side. The thing is, at the heart of this trend is demand. More Indian families across Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 cities are seeking IB and Cambridge curricula, not just for prestige, but to offer their children a global education without having to send them abroad. But while global education groups have acquired more than a dozen Indian school chains due to this boom in demand, it's not like everything is going hunky dory for them. More on this in the next segment. Even if investors loved what they saw, which is this demand for global schools, they forgot to focus on what the school's USP was to begin with. Instead, the likes of GSF fall back on the same approach for every school: centralize leadership, trim excess, introduce standardized systems, and make visible infrastructure upgrades. But beneath the surface, the effects of this strategy vary sharply. At premium schools like Sancta Maria, where annual fees are already in the 7 to 8 lakh rupees range, hikes have stayed within the usual 5 to 10%. But at lower fee campuses, the increases can be sharper. For example, at Glendale Academy, tuition jumped by 25% after its acquisition. Sources close to the international school Manthan in Hyderabad told us that it saw a nearly 70% staff attrition after the 100% ISP acquisition. A senior executive from Sancta Maria, where the founder still retains a stake, said that attrition has been lower but still significant. At the Indian public school in Coimbatore, acquired by Globe Educate, 20% of the staff left after the founder exited. Senior executives also brought up student numbers. The numbers fell by nearly a fifth at Glendale and Oak Ridge in the years after their acquisition. Of course, new salary structure could be stirring up this exodus as well. Pre-acquisition pay rises of 8 to 15% have been slashed to 2 to 7% under new management. This may be a standard practice in the West, but it's a sharp adjustment for Indian schools. Individually, these post-acquisition changes might seem like growing pains, but taken together, they reveal a deeper problem. The same Western school playbook that made these operators successful abroad doesn't map cleanly onto India's hyper-competitive, founder-led education landscape. Stay tuned. India's volatile teacher market is nowhere close to the steady status quo of the West. For example, in the UK, consistent systems mean even a small salary bump makes a huge difference. But that's not the case in India. Here, teacher salaries are lower because they account for purchasing power parity, while the number of schools and demand for teachers are both surging. The market is anything but stable. In cities like Coimbatore, where at least 10 new Cambridge schools have opened in 2025 alone, talent is in short supply and bidding wars are the norm. A math teacher earning 30,000 rupees can see offers jump to 60,000 rupees within months, especially from new rival schools that are desperate to staff up. Founder-led schools tend to respond quickly to this churn. Two founders told Valli how they retain star faculty members and match job offers with pay bumps as high as 50%. But international school operators, bound by centralized processes and global norms, typically stick to a 2 to 7% annual increase in line with their Western playbook. As a result, well-trained, experienced teachers leave and classroom quality drops. And rebuilding that talent pipeline isn't easy, especially in a system that relies on teaching excellence to uphold its brand. Also, schools in India are deeply promoter led. The founder isn't just a figurehead, they are the school's face, heart, and operating brain. Teachers and parents alike base their view of the school around the culture the founder has built. So, naturally, when founders exit post acquisition, it harms trust. That's what makes post acquisition transitions so fragile. In Western school systems, founders can exit without disrupting the soul of a school. Institutional structures, professional management, and stable funding ensure continuity. Not so much in India. According to a senior executive at a PE firm, at schools like Sancta Maria, where the original founders continue to retain a minority stake and remain involved in school affairs, things are better. The thing is, private equity ownership introduces a different kind of instability. No single person holds more than a 10% stake, meaning leadership changes are frequent. For instance, Sancta Maria has cycled through 3 CFOs since the acquisition. And while private equity may not hold back on spending, but where that money goes and where it doesn't reveals a skewed sense of priorities. For instance, an executive from Sancta Maria told us that a new pickleball court was installed post acquisition when a better use of that investment would have been for teacher training programs. According to another executive from Glendale Academy, budgets were slashed post acquisition, which resulted in old malfunctioning school buses, outdated computers, and aging dining hall facilities. This pattern, at least in some institutions, is telling. Standardized visual upgrades that photograph well took priority over less visible investments, such as training or transportation. The thing is, if private equity wants to uplift Indian education, it must adapt, not import. Schools, at the end of the day, are long term investments, which require nurturing for years to achieve returns. Many PE firms try to accelerate growth while cutting costs, but the combination often lowers quality and, in the long run, profits. The result is detrimental to all stakeholders involved. In fact, according to the founder of a rival school and 7 students studying there, Cognita's acquisition of Chirek International School in Hyderabad is widely seen as a standout. They say that post acquisition, staff attrition has been low, academic culture has remained intact, and student satisfaction has been high. This goes to show that when PE firms are focused on the long term, they can improve governance in the Indian school system. They can share best practices across a global school network and offer international opportunities for staff and student body alike.
Daybreak is produced from the newsroom of the Ken, India's first subscriber-focused business news platform. What you're listening to is just a small sample of our subscriber-only offerings. A full subscription offers daily long-form feature stories, newsletters, and a whole bunch of premium podcasts. To subscribe, head to theken.com and click on the red subscribe button on the top of the Ken website. Today's episode was hosted and produced by my colleague Rachel Varghese and edited by Rajiv Sien.